They all decide to let Josuke choose, showing that he's been naturally accepted into the family. This is the ending of JoJolion. This ending is definitely unique compared to others in the series. In fact, that label could be applied to the entirety of JoJolion. The focus of this ending first and foremost is to round off the theme of the series. Everything that has been seen throughout the part in relation to memories and family is present here, and we finally get to see Josuke progress from someone with no identity or family to becoming a fully realized person with a family around him. The ending also showed us that there is no easy fix for everything. Jobin's ambition led him to believe that he could win through strength alone. It isn't that simple, and the only way the family could really be at peace was through enormous sacrifice. I feel like the way death is handled here is quite unique for JoJo. We're shown this broken family that has to pick up the pieces. People don't just move on from trauma, but there is still hope for the future. The most interesting aspect of this ending to me would be the way it treats everything around it. Even in the final chapter, new information is introduced and new threads into the future are established. Holly is still in a coma, with the method of saving her still being foreshadowed. The rock humans in general still exist in some capacity and will likely play a future role. The phenomenon of the walleyes, along with other blessings from the earth like it, still exist in the world without a fully understood origin. Compared to most other parts, JoJolion definitely introduces the most to its world without necessarily concluding it. This is similar to previous elements of the series. The stone mask was introduced in part 1, and it was not fully explained until part 2. Stands were introduced in part 3, followed by the stand arrow in part 4, before finally getting an origin story in part 5. Both the mask and the arrow were featured in chapter 99 of JoJolion to show that the new universe equivalent would be the blessings from the earth. Like with those, I expect that we will be seeing more of these blessings in part 9, along with the look into their history. Josuke as a character also certainly has an open future. While his inner conflict is over and he has finally reached a level of normalcy, he still has his goal of saving Holly to accomplish. I feel like part 9 may end up being one of the JoJo parts more connected to the past, like part 2 or 3. As with any part, I'm certain there will be a new lead, but I think it's possible to see familiar faces from part 8 as supporting characters. I always wondered how a character like Carrera might come back into the story. Her goal was to get one of the fruits for herself, but with every faction in the story surrounding the one fruit, it was hard to see where Carrera would fit in. Now that we know that there are more out there, that's definitely a way we could see her come up again. Fumi was also an interesting inclusion in this part. Some have said that he may be the next protagonist, however I find this unlikely. But we never actually learned what happened to him later on, so it may be possible to see him fill an old Joseph-like role in a future story. Joseph has a direct connection to Holly, so I would wonder how he would respond to the events happening now. Holly was shown to be a very knowledgeable character, and it's interesting to think about what she knows that we still don't. The Speedwagon Foundation is also something I fully expect to take a front seat in the newest part. I think one of the biggest sources of turbulence during Part 8's release has definitely been its monthly schedule. I can only speak for what I've seen from the Western perspective here, but it seems that the monthly release affects the perception of fans negatively in a couple different ways. First is how it relates to the whole Araki forgot idea. For years we just heard the same thing over and over again about how certain elements were dropped, which inevitably came back into focus again. I think the cause of this was that spread out release. Things in the past feel much farther away than they really should be, and when a new element is introduced, the story can spend quite a lot of time on it with previous points not yet resurfacing. On the other hand though, I feel like the monthly release has given a lot of people tunnel vision. We just keep looking forward expecting things to work out a certain way, and it just doesn't play out like that. People that were reading since early on were used to that feeling of so many possibilities being ahead that they just couldn't see the end being close. I think the best example here is the character of Toru. A lot of people really just couldn't accept the idea of Toru being the main villain. To a lot of people, it felt like Toru was this character introduced so late that he couldn't possibly be the final villain. But the reality is that Toru and his stand have been present in some capacity for almost a third of the story. There may even be earlier hints at the character that we aren't fully aware of. We saw characters die, but even up to the last chapters, people were saying they could be brought back. Certain plot elements will appear and even receive elaboration, but people don't consider them fully done since they expect a more straightforward explanation to pop up. With something like the walleyes, maybe it really is just something where we realize its nature from the big hints dropped around it. Or maybe even something that isn't truly done yet, like the stand arrow. Another example is with the flash forward. The answer to this was far more simple than a lot, including me, believed. People have actually been pointing this out for a long time before I saw it. Some just didn't want to believe a certain outcome despite it being the case, and we let that color how we view the course of the story. With a lot of these, people including myself miss the big picture and expect more than what was ever actually intended. The JoJo fanbase is in an interesting spot. I'd go as far to say like 99% of American fans who read JoJolion were doing it as their first ongoing part. JoJo was extremely niche in the States until the anime started, and by that point, Part 8 had begun. There are some out there that were reading Part 7 as it released, but I have big doubts that there was much of anyone before that. So the mindset for this group of fans is just inherently different from how it must be in Japan. An ongoing part beginning and ending just simply isn't in our cultural memory. I'm hoping that with JoJolion, we can sort of get our sea legs when it comes to ongoing parts, and move on with this knowledge into Part 9 to temper our expectations properly. Because of how open everything has been left, I fully expect Part 9 to pick up on many of the things left behind. In an interview from shortly after the start of Part 7, Araki stated that he had a general outline planned up to Part 9. This definitely indicates to me that there will be recurring and further fleshed out elements, just like there were from 7 to 8. In another interview, Araki may have even alluded to Morio playing a role in the 9th part. All we know about Part 9 so far is its tentative title, JoJo Lands. But even with just that, there's a lot to think about. JoJolion's title actually ended up having huge significance to the part, with Araki hinting at this all the way back in the 2nd volume. The name JoJolion signifies the existence of the protagonist and how he was brought into the world by a miracle to act as the counterbalance to Calamity. The first thing to come to mind with a title like JoJo Lands is that we'll return to a part focused on traveling, rather than the more stationary parts like 4 and 8. The lands part of the title also brings to mind how Josuke mentions the nearby lands that could possibly be the home of more fruit. I feel like JoJolion served two different purposes. First was its stated purpose, to tell a story about breaking a curse. This is the aspect of JoJolion that is focused on the family and how they deal with Calamity. The other aspect is continuing on the world built by Part 7, adding to it and moving it along to the future. JoJolion introduced new supernatural aspects that not only set up future appearances, but also recontextualize and round out things from years prior. I'd say that both of these goals have definitely been accomplished by Part 8. I think once the dust settles, we can finally look back and appreciate the setting up done by JoJolion, as well as the more personal story it ended up telling. I've mostly avoided speaking about JoJolion in definitive ways outside of these videos since it wasn't done yet. Now that we've reached the ending, I can definitely go forward with videos about the individual topics of the story, as well as updating some other types of videos to include everything. For now, there will be a break from the monthly reviews, but I will definitely be back for more when more content comes out. There's a lot to look forward to if you're a JoJo fan right now, so expect to see me comment on those in some capacity. If you want to be updated on new videos or leave suggestions, join the Hamon Beat Discord using the link in the description. To receive rewards like Discord perks and some uncut videos, you can support the channel on Patreon. And finally, for future videos, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. This is the part of the video where I thank my $5 and up patrons. Thank you to the Owl God, Alex Ramirez, Raziana, Anasui Hat, Doorbell, Cloudy, Monkman, Ashton Joseph Miller, Crayon, Jesper Jansen, Austin Nino, Rigo Vids, Zukato, Shane Giger, Walter White, Whiskey, Taylor Choi, Pumpkin Doge, Marrow, and Gift G Stands.